Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Hello there! Grabe, tagal ko sa, ang tagal ko sa back end. Hello, Sir Joseph. Thank you so much for tuning in. And hello, everyone. Welcome back. Of course, we did not have, we did have pala last night, but it was really quick. I was just there for a very short period of time because I was in a hurry. I was really busy yesterday, and I'm really just grateful that today is done because I had a lot of work this Thursday. This Thursday. Yeah, that's it. And I just received a phone call that I was supposed to have a meeting at 7:30, and I totally forgot about it. So sorry, super sorry for that. Was just so consumed by a lot of things. So anyway, hope you're having a really nice week. Hope everyone's enjoying their week. Well, I know I am. And I hope that you're all just comfortably seated somewhere out there. So anyway, welcome back to Random Thursdays. And tonight we are gonna be talking about the danger of close-minded thinking. Do we know people who are close-minded? Or maybe we are one of those who are close-minded, 'di ba? Baka naman tayo talaga 'yun. So let's listen to this topic, and also again, feel free to join the conversation. And to all those who are watching a replay, please do not hesitate to post your comments or your experiences or whatever you want to share on the comment section. Especially if you can relate to the topic, post lang kayo kasi nagbabasa naman po ako ng mga comments. Okay, medyo late lang talaga ako sumagot pero nagbabasa ako ng lahat ng comments, messages, ganyan. Thank you. And some of the topics that we have are actually suggested by our audience. So, yeah, para masaya. We'll talk about the things that you want to talk about because this is not for me. This podcast episode is always and will always be for our audience. So let me share my screen there. Yeah, okay. I hope that works. And kasi kanina nagahang yung ano ko, yung connection ko. So anyway, once again, I'm Irene. I'm a real estate broker in the Philippines. I'm also a motivational speaker and a writer. And tonight, our topic is all about being close-minded. So if you're there in the audience and wondering why am I watching this podcast episode, well, maybe you're interested because you are dealing with a lot of close-minded people, or sometimes you tend to become the close-minded people. um, so let's listen to this and find out if you're really close minded and how do we become open minded. All right. So let's start with the definition of close minded thinking. Why is that not showing? All right. So there you go. Um, Close minded is having or showing rigid opinions or a narrow outlook. That's from Oxford Languages. Thank you, Jessica, for the heart. Okay, so again, that's the definition. So that's having or showing rigid opinions or a narrow outlook. So you're close minded, you are not open to receiving new ideas around you or from the people who you're talking to. All right, so that's the definition. We have to always set the parameters because we cannot talk about something that we don't understand first, right? So, why are people close minded? Okay. So why are people close-minded? Well, there are several reasons. The first one is because they have a preference of positive and agreeable information. Sabi ko na nga ba, may magko-comment ng ganyan eh. In-expect ko na meron, pero hindi ko in-expect na ikaw. Okay, so when we are talking about close-minded, some people are just close-minded because they prefer something else. You wouldn't prefer something else if you don't have another preference, right? So in here, when people are close-minded, they just want to they just prefer having that side wherein it's favorable to them or something that's agreeable to them. So that's why they're close-minded. They don't want to agree with you because they already have an idea of what they want to agree with. Next is Okay, next is Okay, next is the addiction to feeling morally righteous. Do we know a lot of people who are morally righteous? So what's morally righteous? When you're always saying that this is wrong and that is right, this is that you're right and somebody else is wrong. So there are people who are like that. Sometimes you are also that person, you know. Let's just stop thinking about other people first. Let's just look at ourselves. Sometimes you also tend to become close-minded by insisting that we are right and the other person is wrong without even knowing their side of the story. Or maybe we are just, you know, we just prefer to listen to our own voice and not listen to another person's voice. So then what happens is that we believe that we're right and they're wrong. So that's the feeling of being morally righteous. No, you're judging the other person, if he or she is right or wrong. Okay. So hold on. Hello, Miss Jennifer. Hello, ma'am. Thank you so much for tuning in. Ano to? Sorry naman, ganyan ako. Okay. So, next will be another reason. Okay, I have a very bad headache. I'm sorry. I'm not sure if you can see, but if you can see my, like, I have a very, my eyes are about to drop. My eyes are about to drop. So anyway, I have a very bad headache at this time. Okay. No, don't worry about it. It's just because I had a lot of work. So, okay, another reason why people are close-minded is because of their huge ego. Okay, I'm not gonna expound on that, but you already know what that means. People who don't want to be brought down, they just have this huge ego and they just want to listen to themselves and they don't want to listen to somebody else. Okay, so that's huge ego. Another reason is the lack of exposure. Oops, my internet's kind of laggy. Sorry about that. All right. So, the lack of exposure. When people lack the exposure to different opinions, when you grew up with a very traditional family, and I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, all right? I mean, families will always have their own sets of principles, sets of values. You know, your parents would have probably raised you the way they were also raised. So I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but not being exposed to different perspectives and not being exposed to different opinions, and you being used to just everyone agreeing with you, then that's what makes some people close-minded because they got used to just being agreed with. Um, when people just agree with you all the time, you lack the exposure of other being on the wrong side. So now you feel like you're always on the right side, and and when people do not think the same way that you do, you think that they are close. You think that they are wrong, but that's the importance of traveling. I really travel alone a lot, a whole lot actually. That's why I became really open-minded. It's because I was so exposed ever since I was in high school. I already started traveling with my mom until college, and then after college, I was already on solo trips. I do that most of the time, like 80% of the time that I'm traveling, I do it on my own because I think the more I expose myself to the world, the more I engage with different people in conversations, the more I understand that there are so many perspectives that I need to understand, and not only our or my own perspective of things. So yes, the lack of exposure also makes people close-minded. What's this? Hello, ma'am. I just ulit. Thank you so much for tuning in. Close-minded ka, ayaw mo magpahinga. Sana pwede magpahinga. Sana all. Kaya magpahinga. Okay, next is the unwillingness. Oopsies. Again, my internet's kind of laggy. Sorry for that. Okay. So the unwillingness to learn. And this is what I always say. I've already mentioned this in several podcast episodes that we should always, always, always be willing to learn because we're not perfect, no matter how old we get, no matter how much knowledge we have, no matter how many degrees we earn. We always have something. We still have something to learn every single day. We will always be able to learn something, and it's something that we should make as a habit of learning new things every single day. You don't have to learn like big things, just learn something new every single day. So if you have like 365 days in a year, you have probably learned 365 new things, right? But most people are just stuck with with what they already know, and they're no longer willing to take in new information. Okay, so my internet's laggy. Let's wait for it to load. All right. So how do we detect close-minded people? I don't know if this are you still gonna load? Let's do that again. Okay. Such a waste if it doesn't show up. So how do we detect close-minded people? Okay, the first one is obviously the people who claim that they're always right. So that's the most obvious what's this? That's the most obvious hint if you are talking to a close minded person. They're always, always, always right. They would insist on telling you that they're always right. They also tend to be judgmental. Of course, if you're close minded, you would not think of other people's perspectives. So you tend to be judgmental. If you're one of those people who are judgmental, and I tell you this, everyone's judgmental. Every chance that you get at being judgmental, you actually take it, right? So there are people like that. I'm also judgmental. I'm not gonna deny that. I judge people by their email addresses. I was telling that to my to my staff earlier. Like I judge people by their email addresses, or I judge people by by so many things. So we tend to be judgmental. But kidding aside, if people are judgmental, um, like they judge you to your face and they voice it out, that's not right. You can be judgmental. Okay, this is real talk. You can be judgmental, but just put it in your head. You don't have to verbalize it. Okay, let me just go back to the audience. What's this? Uy, open-minded daw siya. Tara na. Hello, dog. Hi. All the way from Romania. I was wrong once in my life. I thought I had made a mistake, but had. Oh my God. Okay. Mga taong ayaw patalo. Ano to? Pabida. Lagi may sasabihin, ayaw pakabog. Yeah, that's a good thing about being a speaker. You know, when you're already so tired, you don't want to speak about anything anymore because you speak for a living. But that's a good point. Yeah, always they always have something to say. All right. Next is they tend to generalize, generalize general statements. Most people, everyone, or you know, males or females, they have this kind of this. They have this statement of just putting everyone in, you know, labeling a group of people. So they tend to generalize. Okay. Another thing is anything is perceived as a threat. Hello, mga panira sa buhay. Oh, why does it not show on my screen? Okay, but I can see it here. Okay, so I have actually, I have three screens just in case something goes wrong because internet's really laggy at this point. So, yeah, so I have three monitors in front of me. Okay, so yeah, anything is perceived as a threat. I talked about insecurity, right? In a previous episode. So there are people who think that they're really insecure. So if they're talking to you and you're open minded and they're not, they perceive you as a threat to them, or they feel that you are greater than them. So you're considered as a threat. So that's why anything is perceived as a threat. Okay. Another thing is another thing is they're easily offended. Ay, meron ba sa inyo diyan na mabilis ma-offend? So, there were so many times in my life where people ask me, "Di ka na-offend? Bakit? Wala ka bang pakiramdam?" I'm like, well, people are entitled to their own opinions for as long as it's not below the belt. I don't really care. Um, whatever the comments are about me, I just tend to like, they must be coming from a place of, not appreciating you. I mean, you cannot please everyone, right? So if they don't appreciate you, that's also okay. It's not a big deal, right? But there are people who are easily offended, and well, that's one of the reasons why you may be easily offended is because you're close-minded. Because when you're close-minded, you tend to just listen to your own thoughts and not with the thoughts of other people. Hello, Sir Taya. Good evening po. Andyan kayo sa audience, pero hindi naglo-load yung screen ko. So, ayan, dito na lang ako sa kabila. Ayan. Wala. Ayan. I need to show your comments. Aray ko, sorry. Oh, easily offended ka ba, Sir Joseph? Parang hindi naman. Okay. So what are the dangers of being close-minded? So that's the main topic for tonight. There are several dangers to being close-minded, and so we are going to talk about these dangers. So the first danger is obviously it hinders your self growth, because if you want to grow, you really have to listen to different sides or different perspectives or different views, different standpoints, whatever you call them. You have to have you have to have an open mind so that you will be able to understand everybody else in your team, maybe, or in your family, maybe, or in your social circle, maybe. And if you're not open minded, if you're close minded, it hinders your self growth. You can't possibly improve yourself if the only voice you listen to is yourself. You also have to heed to other people's advice, especially to those who know better than you do. Another thing is it limits your social circle. Like nobody would want to hang out with a close minded person, right? So I really love my circle, because my circle, they're non-judgmental, they're non they're non-judgmental, and they're also really open-minded. They're also liberal in a way that they don't think as if we live in the 1900s. So that's, I think, that's really good as well. But also they're grounded. But so you have your social circle, and I also talked about this in a previous podcast episode where I talked about who should you keep in your life. Um, one of those people should be open. One of those people, or all of those people at least, are open-minded, so that you don't really have to explain yourself every single time, because that's a waste of energy. When you have to explain yourself all the time to people who you really like, right? Next is, okay, naghang ulit. Pay for it. When you're close-minded, you also miss out on opportunities. Um, Culturally speaking, 'di ba ang mga Pilipino, masyado tayong maraming dahilan kung bakit hindi natin gagawin yung isang bagay. So, okay, so I had to shift from English to Tagalog para hindi masyadong kasi 'di ba it's a cultural thing. So anyway, so yeah, most people do not succeed in life because we always have excuses. And one of those excuses is being close minded. And when we're close minded, we miss out on opportunities. So that's another danger, because instead of, having these opportunities in front of you, you don't do anything about it because, well, you're close minded. So it's really dangerous. Sayang, di ba? What a waste. When you're close-minded, you also tend to hurt others, because since you don't listen to other people, you only listen to the tiny voice inside your head. You only listen to your own thought. You tend to not listen to other people, and eventually you hurt other people because they feel like they're not validated, that their feelings are not valid, that they don't deserve to be heard, or they're not even heard because are only listening to your own perspective. So again, eventually you hurt others when you're close-minded. Um, meron na ako mga nakasamang tao na, well, kaya siguro ako open-minded. Kasi I've also been with people who have been very close-minded and eventually nakaka-hurt kasi parang hindi hindi nila naririnig yung side mo. Parang gusto lang nilang marinig yung side nila. And it hurts sometimes because you feel like they don't care enough to listen to you. Oh, ayan. So, medyo humugot ako ng konti doon. Kasi 'di ba, nag-explain ka pero ayaw nilang makinig. It hurts. So, that's another danger. You eventually hurt people. And also, especially if you're a parent. Ito naman, if you're a parent, you want to be a good example. But if you're close-minded, how can you be a good example to your children? Well, one good thing is that my mom's really modern. She taught us to be forward thinking and to always listen to different sides of the story before you have your own judgment, or before you have your own reasoning. And that's how I was raised. So I tend to be more, more understanding of people. Also because I was the eldest, so I was taught like that, maybe. But all these examples, I'm saying this because we have to be good examples to other people, whether to our children maybe, or to our teammates maybe in the office or in the workplace. So if we're close-minded, and especially if you are a leader, if you're close-minded, you are being a poor example to the people who are also following your leadership. So yeah, there's a danger to being close-minded. People are gonna hate you. To put it very bluntly, people are gonna hate you for it if you're close-minded. You may not feel it maybe because they're really just polite and maybe they're kind, but eventually they would resent you and you also become, for example, to them. Oh, why is there a sad sad emoji? Okay, so how do we become open-minded para naman hindi tayo mag-end on a negative note? So we are ending this on a positive note. So how do we become open-minded? And of course, my internet's really laggy. So let me load that again. Is it working? Okay, it's working now. Okay. So how do we become open-minded? The first one is we have to be aware of our own agenda. What do you really want? Okay, so I also talked about this in a previous episode. Oh my God, I'm running out of topics to talk about. So in a previous episode, I talked about how to communicate, right? And when we are communicating, we have to have a goal of how we want to of what's the end goal of communicating with other people. So we have to be aware of our agenda so that we can also see other people's perspectives about it. Kasi pag hindi mo alam kung ano yung gusto mo mangyari, ang nangyayari is parang sabog. I mean, sabog yung agenda mo, sabog yung kalalabasan ng conversation. So you have to be aware of your agenda, what you want out of that conversation. Nakakaloka. Umattend sa invitation sa pahape. Meron pa bang ganun ngayon? Wala na siguro. Okay, so just be aware of your own agenda. And be aware of the agenda. Okay, another thing is you have to question yourself. Do we ever question ourselves? We should. We're not always right. Okay. And though we are really, well, di ba, may pagka morally righteous naman tayo every now and then, we have to question ourselves. Am I doing the right thing? Am I believing the right thing? Am I supposed to do the right thing? Am I doing the supposed to be the right thing? Tama ba? Yung English ko. Sorry na. Gabi na masyado para ano. Natatawa na ako sa sarili ko. Okay, so see, even right at this very moment, I'm questioning myself. Am I saying the right thing? Okay, you have to question yourself. You are not perfect. I'm always saying this because sometimes we tend to be so self indulgent. Is that the right word? We tend to be so self-absorbed. I think that's the word that I'm looking for. We tend to be so self-absorbed that we don't ever question ourselves if we are doing the right thing. But you know what? Let me tell you this. You are not always doing the right thing. Okay? Don't be so self-absorbed. You can question yourself. If you don't want to question yourself, maybe you can ask another person who will give you a very honest answer. Am I doing the right thing? Right? That's why you have to build your circle, your A team. You have to have them in your life because they're the people who will tell you if you are wrong. So question yourself. If you cannot question yourself, ask other people to question you. Next is to be open to others' views. Well, if you're close-minded, it's so hard to be open to other people's views. But you know, to be able to become to be to become open-minded, no, you have to be open to others' views. Remember, you don't have to accept everything. Okay, let me tell you this. Opening yourself to other people's views does not make you accept their views. Naintindihan mo lang sila pero hindi mo naman sila kailangang tanggapin. Pinapakinggan mo sila pero hindi mo naman kailangang tanggapin na yun yung totoo, 'di ba? Sa mga yun na totoo yung sinasabi nila. Pwede kang makinig pero pwede kang mag-disagree. That's the thing about being open-minded. You just listen because that's the way to go. I don't think there's another way to go. You just listen and you don't have to accept everything, but you have to have an open mind that this may be true, maybe, but how will you know if it's true or not if you don't listen? So just be open to other people's views. Another thing is, of course, adapting to change. Change is inevitable. We've already did I say that? No, I think I said it in a class. But change is inevitable, and obviously, change is normal. Change is something that we cannot avoid because it's a part of our lives. Nobody will ever tell you that they did not change. Okay, if somebody tells you that they did not change, that's the biggest lie ever because we do change. Physically, physiologically, mentally, emotionally, people change. Everything around us changes. Okay, so we may not necessarily feel it, but everything around us changes. So, how do we become open minded? Is to really accept that change happens and adapt to it so that we will be able to understand what's going on, right? Adapt. Another thing is allowing ourselves to be vulnerable. Okay, so my internet's really laggy. All right, there you go. Allow yourself to be vulnerable. And there are times when we don't want to accept that we don't know things. Di ba may ganon, yung parang ayaw mong aminin na hindi mo alam yung isang bagay. But you know what? There's nothing wrong with not knowing everything. There's nothing wrong with not knowing everything. There will be times that you don't know something, and that's fine. You're not gonna die for it. Unless it's a life in that scenario. But I don't think admitting to something that you don't know is something that's gonna jeopardize you in any way, unless again it's something that's really life in that scenario. But in most circumstances, when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we also allow ourselves to learn. Hindi hindi yan ang sinasabi ko. Tanggapin mo na hindi kayo para sa isa't isa. Parang lalim ng hugot mo. May gusto ko bang ikwento? May hindi ba ako alam? Okay. So, 'di ba? Hindi to Love Life, Sir Joseph. Hindi ito 'yon. Okay. So, when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, especially when we don't know things, wala namang mawawala sa atin eh, sa totoo lang. Sometimes we're just so full of ourselves na feeling natin, maraming mawawala sa atin kung hindi natin alam yung sagot sa mga bagay-bagay, pero wala naman masyado, sa totoo lang. Hindi po pwedeng lagi nating alam yung mga bagay-bagay. It's not possible. So, it's okay. to be vulnerable every now and then. All right? And sharing with you, last na pala to, last. Okay. So sharing with you something from someone. Wala, naghanga naman siya. Ayaw makisama ng internet ko ngayon ah. Okay. So open-minded people embrace being wrong. They're free of illusions. They don't mind what people think of them. And they question everything, even themselves. So there is no other statement that fits our topic for tonight except this one. Um, it's just sad that I cannot quote him or her, whoever said these words. But open-minded people embrace being wrong because being wrong is not wrong. Tama, 'di ba? Porke mali ka, hindi naman ibig sabihin nun na masama kang tao. Wala lang, mali ka lang, gano'n. Hindi wala ka lang sa tamang side. Kasi every day we are faced with scenarios wherein we have to choose sides and we don't always pick the right side. And that's fine, I guess. You don't really have to always be obsessed with being right. Okay. There are times that we also have to look at other people's perspectives and understand that they may have better ideas than us. They may have better opinions than us, and there's nothing wrong with that. Mas maganda nga yun eh kapag maraming ideas sa paligid mo, 'di ba? Sabi nila, I think I also said this in a previous episode or maybe in a class that I previously had. If you're always I read this somewhere. Sabi niya, if you are always the brightest or the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room. Why? Because if you're always the smartest person in the room, you will not grow because you always need somebody else's inputs, of course. To be able to grow, you always need somebody else's inputs. You cannot grow on your own. Just like a plant, di ba? Yung plant, hindi siya mabubuhay na puro sunlight lang or puro water lang. Meron siyang iba't ibang factors. Some similar to us, 'di ba? Pareho din sa atin, hindi po pwede na puro sarili lang natin yung pinanggagalingan natin ng growth. We will only grow if we allow different scenarios to shape us or different people to contribute to our growth. Otherwise, walang kalalabasan yung sarili natin. Walang growth, walang improvement, walang development if you don't allow these external factors to, to if we don't understand external factors or we don't allow them to somehow shape us to become better persons. Ano to adapt? Hindi ko na get yung adapt. Kasi isa sa mga advice, adapt to change. Okay, so I hope the topic for tonight is something that's really interesting for you. And just in case this is also interesting to somebody else, you can share the live stream tuloy. You can share the podcast because I'm not removing them from my channel. You can always play them on replay so that, just in case you're losing some motivation or whatever, you can always go back to the channel and play it again and listen to the insights. Okay, so this is what I'm saying. Putting myself in here on Facebook is making me vulnerable because I tend to always share my thoughts, my sentiments, my opinions, and everything else. So that's an example of being vulnerable. Another example from being open-minded is, I'm open to criticism. Like there are so many there are so many people who still criticize me and I really appreciate them. I don't want to hear naman yung parang, ano ba yun, additional color to your feather. Tama ba yung ano ko, yung idiomatic expression? They say na if you're only listening to compliments, you're adding colors to your feathers or feathers to your colors. Kung alala. But the point is, it's also nice to have some grain of salt, di ba? Para may flavor, para mag-grow. So ganun din yung life natin. It's just like my life here on Facebook as a blogger. maraming maraming mga comments and all, but at the end of the day, you take what you need and then leave the rest behind, because again, to be able to improve yourself, you have to listen to so many sides of the story, to so many people, to different ideas, and that's the only way to grow. I don't know any other way to grow, but that's for me the best way to grow, to always have different insights and different perspectives about life. Especially kapag down ka, 'di ba? Ayaw mo naman makinig sa down ka na nga, makikinig ka pa sa isang taong down din, 'di ba? Okay, so there's a lot more to life and to other people than just merely listening to your own thoughts. So don't drown in them. But it's also good to have very strong principles, very strong ano ba tawag doon? Very strong, yeah, very strong principles. It's very nice. That's very good. Kasi, kapag naman wala kang sarili mong principles, mabilis ka namang magigiba. That's also good to have your own foundation, your own principles. Pero at the same time, you also listen to other people para balanse. Salamat, dami ko natutunan to na. Hindi, that's okay. Ganyan talaga pag top fan na. Uy, pa-burger na. Burger. Nag-top fan ka na, na-earn mo na yung badge. So anyway, I hope you learned some new insights, or maybe some insights that you already know but needed some reminders. And I hope that if this podcast episode is valuable to you, you can also share them on your Facebook so that more people can get to, have an idea about what we're talking about in here. So from Mondays to Saturdays, we have a podcast episode every 8 p.m. So we have different themes. You can drop by every 8 p.m. yon. So kasabay siya ng news. So kung ayaw nyo ng mga negativities paminsan-minsan, pwede naman kayo mag-drop by dito sa podcast episode natin. Also, you can suggest some ano ba 'to, mga topics, kasi siyempre nauubos na rin po yung mga ideas naming lahat sa team namin. So if you have any suggestions on what we can talk about, please feel free to send us a message at business@ivreen.com. You can also send us a message on our inbox, or you can also send a message sa WhatsApp. So lahat ng possible ways to communicate, gawin nyo. Kasi itong podcast episode na 'to, para sa inyo talaga 'to. Dito para sa akin. Kasi kung para sa akin, hindi na ako magpa-podcast. This this is really scary, you guys. Okay, hi Ma'am Charm, thank you so much. Oh, that's so kind of you. Hindi ba halatang haggard na ako. Thank you everyone. I'll see you all again tomorrow for another your favorite F word pala. So for another podcast episode of your favorite F word. So we are gonna be having another F word tomorrow. And on Saturday, our Servicio Sabado is back again. So hopefully, you'll tune in once again tomorrow and on Saturday, and sa Monday ulit, ganon. So again, do not hesitate to send us messages. We really appreciate them. Hello, Sir Sanglay. Thank you so much. Thank you. Maray na banggi po. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. And to those who are watching the replay, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. I can see you in the analytics. I cannot see your names, but I can see you in the analytics. Thank you so much for watching. And stay safe, stay healthy, stay open-minded, and God bless you all. Until then, see you. Bye-bye.